Hello book lovers, and welcome to or welcome back to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Alright, so today I just wanted to do a quick June wrap up. Now the books that I'm going to be talking about today are not all the books that I read in June. I did a wrap up for all the books that I've read so far for the Aurelian Magical Readathon, which covered May and June, and I will go ahead and link that and you can take a look at it if you want to see all the other books that I read. But today I'm going to go over the 5 other books that I read this month. 2 of them are in vlogs that have already been uploaded or will be in the next week. So I'm going to go ahead and start with those because those are also the only 2 books that I have physically. And I'm not going to go too much into detail with those, just because if you want to know more about them, you can go ahead and check out those vlogs. I'll go ahead and link the vlog that was already posted, and you can of course subscribe if you want to see that next vlog coming up. All right, so I think I'm going to work a little bit backwards here and start with the last book that I finished and then move to earlier in the month. So this is the last book that I read this month, and that is Fang, and it's just like a little graphic novel following a female vampire and her werewolf boyfriend. It seems to be just, like little snippets of their life. I ended up only rating this 3 stars. It was really short. It was only 100 pages. It wasn't anything overly deep. It was just, a good time, but, not the most memorable. The next book that I'm going to mention is in my Westport vlog, and that's the nonfiction Ace by Angela Chen. I'm not going to go too much into it. I don't have too much to say about it. I didn't rate it because it's a nonfiction book, but it is a book that I really enjoyed. I myself am on the Ace spectrum, so this was an interesting experience for me to learn more about this, and I'm looking forward to continuing my education on the topic. So I think this is a good starting point if this is something that you're interested in. So the next book, I listened to the audiobook, and that is Hollow Fires by Samira Ahmed. This is, I believe, a YA story about a young high school student. I think she might be a senior, who is the editor of her school newspaper. The school is, I don't know if it's a private high school, but she is there on scholarship. So she is not as wealthy as the other students around her, and she is also Muslim. So she starts to hear the whispers of someone asking for her help, and it ends up being the whisper of the ghost of a young boy who was killed by, well, you'll figure out in the story. He was killed, and his body was left in the park, and he was killed because he himself was Muslim. I believe they were saying that he was Israeli, and he had brought a jetpack to school that one of his teachers mistook for a bomb, and he was arrested, but the charges were dropped because it was not a bomb. But so this book focuses very heavily on Islamophobia because her school starts to experience racist attacks, and so her and her friends are trying to figure out kind of like who's behind it. It has I would say kind of like a Lots Away, kind of like Ace of Spades vibes to it for sure. It deals a lot with racism, and also you get a little glimpse of the dangers of the internet and how much it can poison vulnerable people who kind of fall down those rabbit holes. So it's definitely a book that made me think a lot. It made me very emotional, both, feeling incredibly sad, incredibly frustrated, very angry. So it's definitely a book that if you're looking for something that's going to bring up a lot of emotions or that's a good conversation starter, I would highly suggest it. It's a relatively newer book, so it's a very relevant topic. I know even the June 6th attack on the Capitol was mentioned in it. So I definitely would say that if you're looking for something that discusses current day Islamophobia, political climate, racism, things like that, that this is a book I would definitely recommend. And I don't think I mentioned it, but I did give that book a full 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. But the next book I read was The Fever King by Victoria Lee. I didn't listen to this. I read this on my Kindle. So here's an image of it. This follows Noam. His name, I don't really know how to say his name. It's Noam. But he is the son of refugees. This does take place in a futuristic post-nuclear war America. So he is living pretty much in the slums. There's also like refugee camps, and there is a magical plague that is going around, so people get incredibly sick, but if they happen to survive it, they gain some sort of magical power. And that's what happens to him. He unfortunately loses his father to this plague, and his mother had died a couple years ago. I think it was suicide. And so now he's on his own, but he wakes up and he has these magical powers that allow him to really connect and control like technology. And so he's brought into like one of the higher level academies to go ahead and learn how to control those powers. So he is working with, and I always forget his name, so I'm not going to say it. He's a leader. He is pretty much kind of like immortal. Years ago, before even the nuclear war and everything, he was part of a program where they were like experimenting on and torturing people who were gaining magical powers, and he and his brother ended up kind of forming a revolution and tearing down the form of government back then, and then creating this small nation, which is somewhere on the east coast of the US, but it's just like a mini America. So they ended up forming that, but he was the king of that place for a while, but stepped down from, full power. But it seems like he is still in, a very powerful position. Specifically, he still controls the military. And he shows a lot of interest in our main character because he himself, while incredibly powerful, does not have power over like certain technologies. It's a situation where you're reading this book and you're unsure of really who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. There's a love interest for our main character, another boy at the academy who seems to be on the opposite side, but he seems to be also fighting for the good side. So, our character is kind of torn at where he needs to be because his main goal is to help the refugees because they're being very mistreated. They're being deported to places where the plague is stronger, and so their chances of dying increase. So we deal a lot with mistreatment of immigrants, refugees, spread of fear of people who are in need of assistance from us rather than providing aid and empathy for people who are in danger. So another book with some heavier topics. And I really enjoyed it. It was another great conversation starter. It's a bit more sci-fi based, and it's high intensity, high stakes, so I really enjoyed that and really look forward to book 2. It's just a duology, so a pretty quick read. And I keep forgetting to mention what I rate books. The Fever King I rated 4 stars. The last book I'm going to talk about, which is actually the first book that I finished in the month of June, was Dial A for Aunties by Jessie Santanto. And this is about a woman whose mother sets her up on a date with someone that she found online, and the man attempts to sexually assault her, and so she accidentally kills him. And so she drives home with his dead body, and she's like, Mom, I killed somebody. What do we do? And her mom's like, oh, let me handle this. So she calls all her aunts, all the aunties show up, and they're like, okay, let's drink some tea and then let's get rid of this body. But it gets a little bit complicated because they have the wedding the next day. The family business is weddings. So our main character is a photographer. Then one of them does makeup, cakes, flowers, all that jazz. And this is a really big wealthy client, so they're like, okay, we're just going to stuff this body in a cooler and we're going to go to the wedding. And so it's a very funny story. There's a lot of humor, there's a lot of drama, not just with them trying to hide the body, but also with the wedding. There's a lot going on there. There is a bit of a romance. Our main character, she had a boyfriend back in college that she really loved, but she felt that she needed to break up with him after he got a job offer on the other side of the country, and she couldn't leave her family because there's a lot of things where all the men in the family leave. So all the male cousins have left, all the husbands have left, and so she's like, I can't leave them too. But then he's there at the wedding, and so there's that rekindling of attraction between the two of them, and it's just really sweet. So I really loved the romance aspect, the drama of it all, the family aspect. It was a really great humor to it, and just watching those family dynamics of and Chinese family. So I believe they're Chinese. I believe it was Chinese. Was really interesting. So I listened to the audiobook, which I like to do, especially when there's people who have accents, which the aunties do because they moved here to America when they were, slightly older. And that made it a really enjoyable audiobook experience as well. And I gave that 5 stars because I just had such a great time with it. All right, so that is the 5 books that I read in June that were not part of the Magical Readathon. Let me know down below what the best audiobook you have listened to lately, because the 2 audiobooks that I mentioned were both 5 stars. So I'm always looking for really great audiobooks, and let me know down below what the best one you've read or listened to lately has been. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you next time. Bye!